Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming back to enjoy yet another episode of Get At It podcast. I know y'all have seen a significant change. Well, I say y'all have seen. Probably nobody has seen the significant change, uh, and that's in reference to the fact that the first version of this podcast was wholly unsuccessful. Which is fine. It's one of those things where you learn, you move on, and you find something different. Um, I I'm taking this channel in a different way because I've come across some very unique circumstances over the last, I don't know, 8 months to a year, I guess. Um, and when I say changes, I mean things that I was watching for, based on what it was at the time that I was doing, and specifically, or excuse me, rather more specifically, what I was doing in prayer and in Bible study. And what I found was that the more I gave myself over to being thankful and humble and prayerful, uh, and applying the word and seeking truth in the word, the more things seem to just kind of be okay. Um, Now, that isn't to say that things weren't necessarily okay, prior to that, but of course, everybody's life is relative. So, relative to what was going on prior to that in my life and in my family's life, um, what was going on when I was kind of reasserting myself in this particular journey. That's it was that situation and what was going on at that time that really kind of solidified what it is that, well, at least started the process for me really seeing what is now solidifying into what we're looking at here. So in that, I wanted to kind of offer up an explanation. Well, I shouldn't say explanation. I wanted to offer up a mission statement. I've found in the last couple of weeks across this journey, and I'll make a long story short. Not that I haven't been long winded at this point. Um, Situations in life happen. You're kind of things are running kind of skinny. You're kind of wondering what it is that you're supposed to be doing after this major decision in life, and you come to the conclusion that you don't have any control of it. Shut up. Just move on about your life because God's got it under control. So after kind of living through that, kind of again, but really from a different perspective now, um, I've come to a place over the last few weeks where I've been um, really seeking out those who are better at this than I am. And when I say better at this, I mean, I guess you could say apologetics in general, um, but more, well, whatever you want to call it. At the core, I guess it is apologetics either way. Um, but I've come across some extremely inspirational people, some extremely smart people, um, on both sides, really, of any issue that might be at the end of an apologetics discussion. Um, and through that research and through that combing through all that, the data and the documents and the books and the yada yada yada, I've come to the conclusion that there's there's a lot of there's a lot of combative, not physically, but combative competition when it comes to having these kinds of discussions, right? Um, and of course, more often than not, that's going to be detrimental or counterproductive to the overall discussion when it, um, as it relates to somebody who's genuinely wanting to engage with the conversation, right? So in that vein, and based on, like I said, over the last couple of weeks, a very specific verse has been coming up quite frequently. That of First Peter 3, chapter 15, um, where he kind of lays out what it is that we're supposed to do. You can actually see it up there on the screen, where he kind of lays out what it is that we're supposed to do um, relative to being an example, right? And it really, and the thing is, a lot of times it comes from people. Let me rephrase it. A lot of times, I think people have the approach that they have to testify at everybody, right? And I get it. A testimony is a powerful, powerful tool in discipleship. I totally get it, but it's not always necessary. It's not always the first thing that you should run to. I think, and personally, and I think a lot of times what happens is when we as Christians give our testimony and what we get back as questions, it immediately sets up a guard, right? It immediately sets us up to, oh, this person doesn't believe what I'm saying, so I should be wary about even conversing with them, right? Uh, rather than rather than understanding that the person whom you're speaking with, whom you're giving your testimony to, so to speak, if they're not a Christian, they don't have any idea why what you're saying is important, right? It's not relatable, and that's okay. You're going to come across that probably often if you're seeking these conversations out, but certainly every once in a while, if you're in a position where people are coming to you and asking these questions of you. So I think it's extremely important to remember that having these conversations and answering these questions, of people who are asking, is not about you proclaiming your faith and offering up your testimony. Um, it's really about you being understanding of the fact that you have to approach this from what it is that you know, right? Not with your details of your story, right? But the lessons that you discerned, right, and the journey that is your story. It's really, rather than being about, like I said, rather than being about your testimony and your proclamation of faith, it's about understanding whether or not the person who's asking this question of you earnestly wants an answer and to have a conversation, right? And again, that guard that we put up when somebody starts questioning what it is that we're saying about how it came to where we are as a Christian, that guard we put up will make it difficult for you to discern whether or not somebody's coming to you in what they call good faith, or if they're just being kind of a jerk, right? And I would hate for someone to come to a Christian in earnest search of information, knowledge, and truth, and get shunned because the testimony that the Christian was giving in response to some of these inquiries was not received in the way that made the person who was sharing that testimony feel, the butterflies inside, or whatever you want to call it. So what part of what my goal is here is to kind of change that focus. And if you know anything about Frank Turek, and any of the guys that he's kind of been influenced by, uh, you kind of understand probably where I'm coming from. We have to make sure that the time that we're spending answering questions for people who have questions is spent productively, because we don't want to spin our wheels with somebody who's trolling. You know what I mean? And not to say that there's not a case there's not a case at some point whereby someone who's trolling can't be influenced or driven one way or the other. Um, but we have to understand that the discernment comes not from approaching a question with our life story or our testimony story, but approaching a question with the knowledge, like I said, the knowledge and discernment that's come from that life. One. The other part of this, right? Aside from just being, again, discerning regarding the situation that you're in, the person you're talking to, et cetera, et cetera. The other side of this is being inquisitive as someone who's being inquired of. Okay. By being inquisitive, by asking questions, by trying to understand what it is they're asking, why it is they're asking it, and whether or not they actually want an answer. Um, the only effective way to do that is to ask questions, right? That allows you to kind of open up their mind a little bit. And I don't mean open up their mind like, oh, they're going to be enlightened because she said something. I mean like open up their mind, like open up the book a little bit so you can peek inside it and see exactly what's going on. Um, and without doing that, I think when we don't do that, that's where we get to the competitive kind of thing that we see, which is great clickbait. And I'm the first one to admit I watch it a lot. I love watching some of these guys go to town as far as, the apologetics and polemics with whether it's Christian or Islam or whatever. Some of these guys are really, really good. And it's fun to watch. It's like watching like prize fighters do their thing in a ring. Um, but I think on an everyday level, like you know, day-to-day person who doesn't necessarily have the resources to fly to Speaker's Corner in the UK or whatever, who's just going to engage people in everyday life. I think it's far more important for us to remember to be inquisitive and to be discerning, so as to avoid a lot of that combative stuff. Because, like I said, it just ends up being counterproductive, and creates bad blood between two people, between whom there may not have been bad blood previously. Try saying that 10 times fast, 2 times fast. So what it is that we're doing here, we're on a mission. We're on a mission to execute what Peter commits us to do, right? And I want to read it real quick because it's good to just have it in your head. That's not what I wanted to do. So in 1 Peter 3:15, um, Peter is talking to new church leaders and and new Christians, as a matter of fact, because this is real close to when all this stuff was going down. Um, and he's giving a charge to those who are claiming that they do follow the precepts of or the teachings of Christ. He's giving them kind of a framework, a real bare bones framework, but a framework nonetheless on how to converse with people who ask. And of course, contextually, this is from a time when they didn't have YouTube, influencers screaming in each other's faces and calling each other sister names. You know what I mean? This is from a time when conversation was probably a lot more civil when it comes to, because again, this is like day to day stuff, normal life stuff. So in 1 Peter chapter 3:15, Peter says, "But in your hearts set Christ apart as holy and acknowledge him, giving him first place in your lives." And that's a key part, right? Because we have to understand that what it is that we're doing doesn't come from our desire to do it. It comes from our responsibility to be thankful and to give praise and worship where it is due, right? So in your hearts set him apart as Lord. Always be ready to give a defense, right? And this is amplified, and I like the way amplified because it spreads out the concept a little bit further, contextually as you actually read it. So we'll go with this version for right now. Always be ready to give a defense, and when it says defense, a logical defense, right? And this is not talking about a defense of um, um, a specific question, right? This is just speaking in general. So always be ready to give a logical defense to uh, anyone who asks you to account for the hope and confident assurance elicited by faith that is within you, right? So basically, what he's saying is, look, always have an answer, which means you always have to look to him first. And if you're seeking him, you will have the answers necessary to you will have the information necessary to answer the questions that people ask when they say, "Hey, why do you believe? Why is it that your life, the outward expression of your life and your belief is great?" And you say it's because this Christian thing, right? Why is it about this Christian thing? Our charge, the first part of our charge, is to have an answer for it, right? And I think a lot of times we don't, right? It's not something I spent a whole lot of time, thinking about when I became a baby Christian, 25 years ago. But it's something that as we age and we grow, and Go kick stuff. As we age and mature and grow into more responsibilities, it's something that I think that we have to think about, because these questions are going to come up, right? If we are charged to express our lives, in such a way so as to allow the fruit of our labors, right, the fruit of our spirit to show through. It'll eventually be expected of us to do this kind of stuff. So it's having that reason, thinking it through, and this is going to go back to the origins of this whole channel, but write it down. If you have an idea about this stuff, write it down now, right? Force your brain to remember it so that when it comes up later, you don't have to go searching through your mental Rolodex. Your hand has already written it, so it's ingrained in your muscle, right? Write it down and keep it with you, because I think it'll turn out to be much more valuable than you anticipate. And I know this to be anecdotally true, because I've seen it happen. Seen it happen many times where someone who might have even been slightly combative toward the idea of theism in general, much less Christianity, based on whatever life experience they had. I've seen that barrier be broken down by somebody who could just rationally and logically explain, hey, this is why I believe what I say I believe. And I would encourage you to really investigate that and come up with at least an answer that you're okay with for now, because it may not be the end all be all answer that you have in life, and everybody's answer is probably going to be a little bit different, because everybody's experience is a little bit different, and that's fine. But having an answer can be extremely, extremely powerful, especially when it comes up in a moment where you're not expecting it, right? Having that at the ready can be a game changer. So I encourage you to think about that. Moving on. And here's kind of the last part that a lot of people miss. He charges us to do it with gentleness and respect, right? Now, of course, the contextual meaning of gentleness and respect are probably pretty similar. I haven't looked into the Hebrew to see exactly what it means, but I would venture to say that gentleness probably means without malice on your part, right? In good faith. If somebody comes and asks, we certainly shouldn't be treating them like, oh, you're not? Well, let me explain to you why you should be. Be respectful of those emotions that are elicited by life experience. Because just like when a Christian gives a testimony that's not received the way they want it to be, in much the same way, somebody who's asking questions, if you dismiss the visceral emotional response to their life experience, if you downplay that or try to explain it away and without really sitting down and having a conversation with this person outside of a 2-minute chat or whatever, we have to understand that we're not here to judge their life experience, right? Just like we don't want them judging our testimony, we're not here to judge their life experience. We're here to answer questions. Now, again, by asking the questions we need to ask, we find out the answers to the things we need to find the answers to in order to discern whether or not the conversation is going to be productive in the long run. I think it's much more important for us to learn how to be compassionate and plead a case rather than being haughty in our own knowledge, right? To the point where we end up feeling like we have to berate somebody to make them understand our point, right? We're not here to fight. Right. This isn't going to be like a debate platform where, we start waving fists or whatever. This is just going to be a look at some of the answers that people ask all the time, and it's even true of some Christians where it was true of me. I didn't get answers to these questions for a long time. A lot of that's because I didn't ask them. I never asked anybody these questions. But B, I didn't even know that these were questions that I need to be concerned about until late in the game, and by that time, I got kids and house payments and car payments and all the stuff that you got to worry about as an adult, so it kind of got put on the shelf. But as I've again grown and matured and aged a little bit, I start to see that with that age and experience comes a natural propensity for people to come to you for answers about whatever it is, whatever your expertise is that you've been working on as your career or, as your field of study, whatever it is. This is when people start to really come to you frequently because you have just the experience in life. You're not 25, you're not 30. You know what I mean? You actually, your birthday year starts with a 19, 7 something. And that garners with it some automatic predisposition towards being questioned by other people who are younger than you, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me at all. But having realized that, it started to really unfold for me. That I needed to start looking into this stuff and really getting my feet underneath me when it comes to explaining what it is that I am hopeful in as it relates to my faith. So, with that, guys, I'm super grateful that you stuck around and enjoyed some of this content, and I hope that you keep coming back. We're gonna basically do a weekly little Bible study dive into some of these questions that pop up, and we're going to start with a big one. We're going to start with the question of evil, and we'll dive into that, get it all broken down, and get it into your heads as fast as we can. Probably sometime between Thursday of this week and Monday of next. So stay tuned. We'll still be doing some of the Bible bits. Genesis stuff, because it's fun and you guys seem to kind of gravitate towards it, which is great. So again, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure click that like button, click the subscribe button, because it turns out I only have 14 subscribers right now with a whole bunch of views. So please feel free, hit that subscribe button. Let us into your YouTube algorithm real quick, and we'll keep pumping in hopefully some good information that you guys can use in answering the hard questions in everyday life. So y'all have a good one. Be helpful, be a leader, learn smart stuff. And if you can be here for this stuff, get here.